And I want to tell you what's coming up in the next 3 weeks. Next week, we're going to have Sarah Bitter, who's running for the Ohio Senate. And even though you may not be in her district, I think it's really important that we know all these candidates out there. On August 17th, we're going to have Rosalind Krupp. She is one of the young high school students that organized March for Our Lives. So she will be here to show us her vision, you know, how we need to follow her. On the 21st, because it's been heavy and we've been doing lots and lots of work and we've got lots of work ahead of us, we're going to have the Queen City Balladeers come in and do some fun. So we're going to have some fun because we need fun too.
And my grandchildren.
Yeah. So this past weekend I spent my life, I was canvassing on Saturday for Joe Schiller. I was canvassing on Sunday for AFTAB. I found out some very, very interesting things. They know AFTAB's name. They know him, and they know Rob Richardson. They're happy to know about the judges. They love hearing about the judges. They have no idea as to who Cordray is. No clue. So I got some signs over there. We need signs out, folks. Get signs out, because they don't know who he is. No clue. They don't know who Jill Schiller is. So I went back to the office and said, okay, you need to get signs out there. There's 100 days left, folks. 100 days. And there's a lot of work to be done. And so those one-to-one conversations that you can have with friends and family and neighbors, it's really important. So, and I know it's going to be crazy. The FFL-CIO endorsements come out on August 16. And so that's going to help a lot when there's slate, when we're working side by side, not necessarily coordinating our campaigns between the Campaign for Ohio and the FFL-CIO campaign, but that we will be, the endorsed candidates will be the same, so that will be good. So that's what we got coming up, and there's some crazy things coming up, but I've been having a couple requests from folks. We had a lot of people before. They want some people again, and that's understandable. And because the more times that you can see people and talk to people, it's a good thing. So now I'm going to turn this over to Alberta, wherever she is. She's back there.
Look at her outfit.
Well, she was registering voters today.
Oh.
By the way, when I was canvassing, it was a really great thing. I found a staffer from UC. And she's definitely an AFTAB camp, but then she's got to be very nonpartisan. She's going to be going into all the sophomore classes at UC and having them pull out their cell phones and the big screen and making sure every single one is checking their registration or registering. So got her on board, and that was all through door-to-door canvassing. I had a blast, so I really encourage all of you to get out there. And Sandy Summers just walked in the door. Welcome, welcome, welcome. She's the retired principal from Sands Montessori, and she's working very hard with the Mount Auburn Dems to Mount Adams. Sorry, I'm Mount Auburn, so you know, next door neighbors. So that's good. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
I am impressed with your group. Oh my gosh, I've been reading about you forever and have never made it here for lunch. And unfortunately, I'm on a diet. So anyway, we started, my name's Sandy Summer, and Glenda Bernstein is my partner in crime. We, of course, got tired of griping and being angry about everything that was going on after the election. And right after the primary, we found each other. We didn't know each other before, and we've just been organized since then. And I will tell you, you can look at my shoes, we're on fire. We're on fire.
Ready to go.
We are, yes, tie them up, ready to go. We are on fire. We have had so much fortune in our community. We've had people at our very first meeting raise their hand to be the tech person, to do a Facebook page, to whatever. Long and short of it is, we are having a huge Cordray event. It is going to be August 27th. I'm going to leave flyers here, so you don't have to memorize that. It's going to be a statewide kind of thing. We're invited to what I call the Fab Four: Kathleen Clyde, Rob Richardson, Steve Diddlebach, and Zach Space. The two, what I call the two Supremes. are running for the Supreme Court. That's Melody Stewart and Michael Donnelly. On down to our local judges, Jill Schiller, FTAB, Pat's coming, the whole Hamilton County leadership. Anybody who wants to be part of the Blue Wave has been invited, individuals, you name it. We'd like to have at least 100 people there. If we had 150, I'd be excited. We've invited Sherrod Brown. He probably won't be able to come because he's in Cincinnati the day after. And my brother, who's part of this group, even filled out the form for Barack and Michelle to come. And I need to tell you, if they would show up, you'd have to pick me off the floor. But if I could just leave some of our flyers with you, as many of you that can come would be great. And we are a precinct without borders. We don't believe in walls and borders. So that's why we're working together with Mount Auburn, Walnut Hills, and anybody else who doesn't have a home that they want to join up. So you all have a home. If you know people who are looking for a place to join. And I'll tell you something that happened to me. I was angry, I was mad, I was depressed, I was complaining, I was signing online petitions, and I was hopeless in many ways. But since I've got to know people like you all, and other Dems, and other clubs, and doing this work, which is almost full-time work, I am now full of joy. I am full of hope. In fact, Bonnie Dunkelman told me a story at Anderson Days. The two women came to the booth who thought they were alone. They didn't know there were any more Dems in Anderson Township. That they actually had tears. They were actually broke out in tears. And when I said to Bonnie, I said, you gave them hope, you gave them joy. And that's what we're doing by doing this activity. So I want to thank you for the time. And unfortunately, those people who know me, when I get a microphone, you have to grab it away from me. So I will leave the flyers, and thank you, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're Alberta.
Yes, I'm Alberta.
So that's why it's really important that what I said about Cordray at the very beginning. When we found out in Kevensee, they don't know his name, so we need to get out there. We need to get out there, meet him, because he's a really wonderful guy, face-to-face, handshake to handshake. He is just a warm, genuine man, but he's not effervescent, so to speak. But he is a strong,
He's quiet,
strong
but
man.
decisive.
Absolutely.
He's strong, and yet he listens. So he's a great guy. Thank you so much.
On fire.
Thank you. Yeah, we are
Well,
on fire. Thanks.
I just want to tell you about this morning, guys. I was late today because I was out registering voters. There was a naturalization ceremony this morning at 10 o'clock. We registered, there were 69 people from 29 different countries. We registered 67 of them to vote and got 2 more from the audience.
Wow.
I just want you to know that we were on fire this morning, 69 out of 69. And I took 2 people from this group, Tanya and Ned, and they were with me. And Tanya, you're related? That's your father. He just said, that's my daughter. I'm saying, your daughter? You understand? I'm finally starting to meet some of the connections in this group. It's kind of like, yes, you're a daughter, and he's been a loyal member here, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for coming this morning and registering voters. You had a good time, right? A really good time. We had a wonderful time. Okay. Just regular announcements. Everybody should have a name tag. If you don't have a name tag, please get one. The restrooms are out and back just across the hall. We have this space until 2. You can stay after the meeting. Pat, where's Pat? She's out, there you are. If she's not smart enough to leave at 1 o'clock, you can still grab her and ask her questions then at 1 o'clock until as long as she's going to be here. So go ahead and do that. We have other groups that meet after this one. We have a wonderful group called Move to Amend, which is a great group, which is actually hooked up with a national group, which is getting people to amend the Constitution so that we do not have money in politics. And they've connected us with a national group, and we're making, I love it, we're making real progress just with our little group here. I think that we're really doing some good announcements, I think. My brother is the videographer in the back. There you go, Stan. And Sid is not here yet. I've got some things from him. Okay, we've got 2 people from naturalization this morning. Other announcements? Other announcements? Yes. You need a card? Peter wants to know if you need a card.
Probably not.
Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay. But just really briefly, because most of you know that my intention is to run for Cincinnati Public School Board next year, and I just got accepted into their new Strategic Planning and Engagement Committee
Yes.
and Elisa Hoffman School Board School. That's all for me.
Making progress. Go ahead.
I wanted to say, as a follow-up to previous announcements about the Preserve Burnett Woods issue, there is a community engagement meeting at the Quarryville Recreation Center on August 13th at 7 p.m. For everybody to go and voice their thoughts on our public parks being developed.
There's a card for you.
So-
Fill out for Peter.
So please attend and let them know what you think.
Bennett.
The Congressional Progressive Caucus put out a budget the last couple of days. They call it Congressional Progressive Caucus put out the People's Budget last couple of days. Very interesting. I think we ought to take a look at it. It's several pages, so it takes some reading. They have in there things like infrastructure, a couple of trillion for infrastructure. Actually, the engineers say we need about 6 trillion, but they're starting with 2. They also talk about a 0.25 sales tax on Wall Street transactions. I think it ought to be 1%, but they're at least starting with 0.25. So I think that's a good budget for us to take a look at. The other thing is a little chant that I heard. 2, 4, 6, 8. Impeach, indict, incarcerate. 2, 4, 6, 8. Impeach, indict, incarcerate.
I love it. That's a nice one. Any other announcements?
That really is my daughter, y'all.
Here we go with Rob.
Just to remind people that there is a weekly AFTAB meeting in Northside, Tuesday evenings. It's at the museum in Northside. I think that's 4114 Hamilton Avenue. And social hours like 6:30 to 7 where you can order food. And then 7 o'clock the meeting starts. It's an active group. We've been averaging 30 people every Tuesday evening. So if you want to, they are an action group and they will get you involved in something. So if you are available, you may want to check that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Other announcements?
Okay. That's why I'm reminding you.
Chameleon.
But tonight actually, AFTAB is going to be there.
Right.
Well, I've heard from the ultimate organizer, Richard Asimus, that AFTAB is supposed to come to our Tuesday night meeting at the museum, so it might be a special inducement to come, because I think he'll take questions and so forth, and we'll have a chance to explore some actual issues, which I think is important.
I think that's important. Okay, how are we on announcements? Announcements. Okay, that brings us to Pat Bruns. And Pat is a long resident of Cincinnati. She is a bachelor from the University of Kentucky, finished her master's in Miami University. She's been on the state board since 14. And I'm going to let her tell you the rest of her education background because it goes on forever. I mean, it's a really long thing here, folks. So, Pat, tell us why we should elect you to the State Board of Education.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I think it is afternoon by now. I'm delighted to be here amongst such great Democratic activists. And I am currently endorsed by the Democratic Party. And I do need to say that, not for you, but for everybody else that doesn't know that the judges and the State Board of Education position does not have an R or D behind its name on the ballot. So I'm going to start with, because I'm your geeky art teacher. Got it? Is that better?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I've got that teacher voice usually, so. But I'm going to start with your geeky art teacher and tell you that, of course, education is the foundation. And so we're going to start at the bottom of the ballot. We're going to vote for Pat first, and then we're going to go right back up the ballot and vote for all the great folks on our team that we know will work together to make things better for all of our kids and all of our future. So keep that in mind when you're talking to people that might not have that on their radar. Because as I was told the other day in a meeting, there's a 30% drop-off for on down ballot. So the judges, really the judges and, education, which I'm representing right now, need your help to continue to get that word out. I'm a lifelong West Sider, West Side the best side. Went to Oak Hills High School. My parents built a little house down on Rapid Run, almost to Sailor Park. And you know what? I think obviously, I started 4 years ago in this position with brown hair, but as you see, things have moved on. I'm what I call your mid-century modern girl. It's an art thing. And I'd say that because since I retired from a career in teaching at Northwest Local School District and started working in my community in Price Hill, which I've lived there since '76, it had never occurred to me that I was a privileged white woman, quite frankly. I had a really modest upbringing. I was lucky enough, my sister and I were lucky enough to be adopted when we were infants. And so, that was a time when your parents, my dad had an 8th grade education, and yet he provided a wonderful life for us. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So I didn't really know, with all due respect, I did not know about the lives of some of our other families and children until I started working in my nonprofit in Price Hill. And it has since become very clear to me that there are a lot of children that need our strong voice. I'm running for re-election because I really believe we have inspired leadership at the State Department of Education. We have a terrific board. There's 11 elected. I'm from District 4, Hamilton and Warren County, and a little piece of Middletown. I'm not sure how that happened, but a great educator folks up there too, and a great community. And we have 8 members of the board that are appointed by the sitting governor. But I will tell you, a year ago in January, 10 new elected and appointed board members, and to a person, we all want to speak as one voice for children. Leadership does matter. Let me tell you what I mean by that. In 2015, when I took office, the first 6 months were spent trying to figure out why I was up there, what I was supposed to be doing with this new advocacy hat. I've been an advocate for public schools my whole career as my president of my teachers union. And I think just being in the arts, you all know, unfortunately, because of school funding, they're often the first thing that gets cut. And I believe deeply in the power of the arts to transform lives. I'm your art teacher geek. But so when I got on the school board, the current leadership at the time really didn't have much interest, in my opinion, of hearing about my perspective, my constituent perspective. And so about mid-June, there was a scandal, you may remember this, where they tried to eliminate some of the data from some of the charter schools. We found out about that. The gentleman that was in charge at the time left. In June of 2015, I can remind this group, that Denise Driehaus had a bill, House Bill 70, that was about community learning centers. And then literally overnight, within 24 hours, they added something called the New Academic Distress Commission, which replaced the language we had in place to help our lowest performing schools. By federal law, the bottom 5% are called priority schools. So now what you have is what we call the so-called Youngstown Plan, and I think you might be familiar with that, where if a school has an F 3 years in a row, then they get taken over. The superintendent is replaced by a CEO. The elected Board of Education is reduced to an advisory position. And if you read the language of that closely, if after 1 year the school doesn't get a C on their performance rating, they can expand access to vouchers. In my opinion, this is a blatant attempt to take over our schools. Lorraine was taken over. I think Dayton is in jeopardy. And let me do a caveat about that, because I mean this sincerely. The Department of Education has in place a very robust, what they call it, the Ohio Improvement Plan. They work very closely with our school districts that are their priority schools. But you and I both know that it's going to take more than a grade on a report card based on standardized tests. We've been doing that for 50 years. It hasn't moved the needle, because that's not the problem. The kids can't pass standardized tests. The problem is they have so many other barriers to accessing their academics and being engaged. So this is why I'm running again. Leadership matters. We hired Paulo Di Maria in June of 16. He brings a collaborative leadership style that I think has really transformed the department. The very first day that he took over at the helm, there was a palatable difference in the atmosphere and the level of professional discussion. And oh, by the way, you can see that if you want to. We're now on the ohiochannel.org. So, you know, for those of you that care about those kinds of things, and you know, you just finished a novel and you haven't picked up your next one, or you're not planning your next trip yet, you could, you know, check it out. But let me give you an example of that. Throughout the fall of 16, our superintendents were coming to us and presenting that because of the new end-of-course test, 3 different tests in 3 years, you know, that's not a problem. Evidently it is. So they were coming to us and saying, look, we're tracking our kids here, and we've got some serious problems with numbers of the kids that are not on track to graduate in 2018. So what Paulo did was he formed a class of 18 options work group January 17. I was asked to be on that committee, and this is a great example of, I think, what set the tone for the rest of the time on the board that I've seen on the board. It was entirely different from my first 2 years. He invited all the stakeholders to the table. We had the Ohio PTA people there. We had the Ohio School Board Association. All the education entities were there. And we spent a couple of months trying to figure out what could be, just for 1 year, to give us a break here, give us a little bit of breathing room. What could we do different than just relying on standardized tests so for students to prove their competency and mastery of disciplines and their education? We came up with some stuff like GPA. We came up with some stuff like certain attendance levels, okay? Because we know if kids are in school, they can learn better. So we came up with some alternatives where students could possibly do internships. They could demonstrate learning that way. And there was a couple other things in addition to the career technical credentials that you can earn through our career tech centers. We then were able, when I say we, this is not me, of course, you know, there's so many wonderful people working at the State Department. But Paulo and folks, we were able to have a conversation with the legislature because our recommendations required a change in law. We were able to do that. In 2016, they included our recommendations in the biennial budget. And so the class of 18 has benefited from that. Here's the downside of that. You know, good news, bad news, the yin and the yang of it. We've since continued the work about graduation requirements. We've continued looking at, we have work groups now, that's how we do business. Paulo puts together work groups to tackle specific issues. All the stakeholders, again, are at the table. It's very inclusive. And we're working on looking at the report card. Or why do we collect data? What's the reason for it? What does it actually tell us? And we just have an interim report that the board adopted at the July meeting, and I will have that posted, and if any of you are interested, I can get that to you. And we've reconvened the graduation requirements work group, and I'm on that as well again. And the way Paulo did that was he really reconvened it with the same folks that were at the first one. So we were able to kind of hit the ground running with some new ideas. I say all that to you to tell you that I'm excited about the work we're doing. I'm excited to continue to be involved in what I believe is a really seminal moment in education reform. When I was teaching, we were in the top 5 in the nation. We've slipped to 23. We still have great bones, we have great ideas, but we've not been able to continue to move those forward until now. And I think we have the end of the era of the No Child Left Behind and the testing mania to anchor our forward conversations on. So 2 other big things that we've done, and I've given you one thing at the table here, because I'm your teacher, buddy. I'm going to talk in a minute a little bit about this, and I've given you some links on the back for if you want to do some more in-depth about stuff. I've also given you a little synopsis of my promises made and promises kept. I think I've done a lot of work on the state school board in line with why I told you I was running 4 years ago, and frankly, there's still a lot of the same work to be done, so I'm really still doing the same stuff. So we can talk about that in a minute. But I really want to spend a minute on this junction that we're at, a crossroads in education in America, actually. End of the No Child Left Behind era. In 2014, Obama signed the Every Student Succeeds Act, which replaced it. And so then we immediately, in 16, I guess, started our work with developing our Ohio ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act plan that we had to submit to the feds. Now that's all for your title dollars, right? We just had that approved in February, so that's in place. And we immediately started on a 5-year strategic plan. And I don't know if any of you were involved in any of the stakeholder meetings, but I was on the steering committee, and I was also on a work group called the Excellent Educators and Instructional Practice work group. There were 4 or 5 others, and they did the deep dive research in each of those areas, safe and supportive schools, early childhood education, high school and beyond, et cetera, different aspects of the pre-K-12 experience. And we just adopted that after regional meetings. There were 14 regional stakeholder meetings for that and the ESSA plan. And we had like 1,400 people involved in it, so you can see the difference in the way we're operating. The issue, of course, still is that it's a 3-legged stool, right? We have, in my case, we have the Department of Education work, and we also have the legislature, and then we have voters. And The most recent example I can give you is my constituents tell me that they wanted us to extend the graduation options because they saw much merit in offering students alternatives to 2020. Let me just say it that way. And because that would have been the whole cohort of a four-year, class, a four-year class. They also wanted us to delay on the report card the A to F composite grade, which is, I hate to tell you, it's going to come out in September. It's going to cause all kinds of drama and problems for our districts because it doesn't, it does not reflect the whole story of what a district is doing. We sent the state board created resolutions. We sent them over to the legislature. The process is that everybody and their brother, including the governor's office, etc. Apollo speaks to it in testimony. People can, write in and call in and stuff. They didn't even give them a hearing. And so we need to get more folks in the legislature that are truly public school advocates. And there's just a big divide right now amongst the folks that are in the legislature. We have two members of the legislature that are ex officio members of the state school board. Senator Peggy Lehner from Dayton is the Senate chair of the Education Committee, and Andy Brenner is the House chair of the Education Committee. I will tell you, I do work pretty closely with Peggy, and she is a staunch public school supporter, and her main area of her passion is early childhood education. So she's a great person to work with. So we have opportunities to continue to build these bridges, but you have to build bridges with folks that are willing to talk to you and maybe come to compromise on stuff. The latest thing that we're doing, and then I'll stop for questions, is the report card review committee. Representative Duffy presented House Bill 591, and he has a comprehensive idea about changes that need to be made to the report card. For instance, rather than letter grades and ranking and sorting everybody, which is not helpful, what if we just reported the facts? What if we just reported the percentages in any given category? And what if we then allowed a district to compare and contrast themselves to 3 school districts that were similar in demographics to theirs? It's not helpful to continue to rank the urban 8 against a Mason, or folks that have more resources at their disposal. It shouldn't be dependent on your zip code that you have high quality resources and access to high quality teachers. That's just inequitable. So we need to find a different way to tell this good story of each of our school districts. I want to finish with this. Oh no, I do want to finish with something different. Wait a minute, let me get my brain together. First of all, I will do this because I'm a visual person. This is the kind of the cover page of our new Each Child, Our Future 5-year strategic plan. It's meant to be a framework for school districts to use to develop their own local plan. And so what we're trying to do is move the State Department back to the resource, professional, supportive entity that they were when I was teaching. When I was asked to run for this position the first time I ran, I said, well, wait a minute, I have to get back to you because I don't even know what they do. And I've been pretty involved in education for over 30 years, right? So, but it's because the role that they should play and the professionals we have up there should be resources to help us do our work on the ground. And we should listen to the people that are closest to the issues. The parents, the schools, and their classroom teachers. It's quite that simple. And this plan addresses the notion of teaching the whole child, which is the part I'm most excited about. If you look at it, there's 4 domains, which the color coding is a little odd, but if you'll notice, they're equal domains, and this is the really important part. One has to do with, I'll just say generally, academics. The second one is well-rounded education, science, math, arts, language, etc. One is 21st century skills, and the 4th bucket, the 4th domain, is social emotional skills. Learning how to be resilient, learning how to work as a team, learning how to think critically and creatively about problem solving. These are things that best research tells us are what children need to succeed. Let me give you a couple of final statistics to leave with. Only 34 out of 100 students that start college finish a BA in 5 years. I don't believe we need to be sending students to college right at everybody when they're 18 years old. Some kids aren't ready for it, some kids aren't interested in it. It might not be even the career path that's of interest to them for what they want to do with their life. We need to expand opportunities for career technical skills, and if you haven't been to one of your career technical centers lately, check them out. I mean, robotics, kids are engaged in their learning because they're doing what they want to do. And that is what we're trying to help students get to. 21st century skills, social emotional skills, and exposure to a wide range of career paths so that they can make their own choices for their next step in their life. So our emphasis on personalized learning and trying to give each student a career path and career options and the skills they'll need to follow their dreams. But we do have to recognize we all have a shared responsibility to help support that because it is all of our shared future. I'm going to quit with that, and because I can go on and on forever. My husband's sitting here, Rod Bird, he's an educator too, and he goes, yes, you can.
First of all, I want to thank you so much for all the hard work you're doing. And I'm so happy you're up there fighting for us in Columbus. And Rod does a lot of work too, I know. Thanks. I'm a LeBron James fan. I'm also from Akron. Actually, we were born in the same hospital. We're twins, separated at birth.
From another yeah.
Harry Truman kidnapped me.
Oh.
He opened a school just now, and it's for 3rd and 4th graders who are high risk, like he was. In 4th grade, he missed 85 days of school because he was homeless. And they have all kinds of wraparound services. When they graduate, they get a full ride to Akron U. And I'm wondering if there's anybody knows if we can duplicate that. We need a guy like Andy Dalton or somebody rich who would do that. Is there any movement to try to duplicate that in other areas? Because it's awesome.
I don't have that as an example, but Hughes High School and the IT program at University of Cincinnati, CPS, just formed a partnership. And their freshmen, you had to apply for it, you had to interview for it, and their cohort of freshmen over the next 4 years will be integrating. They'll have professors from UC coming over. They'll be going over to UC so they start to get that experience on campus. And when they graduate, they will have 2 years of college under their belt, and depending on their they will be accepted to University of Cincinnati with their GPA, and the requirements of the program. But this is a group of kids that I think you're seeing partnerships with the private sector and our universities that are expanding these opportunities, because it's not enough, even for kids that supposedly do well in school. they're finding all kinds of struggles to figure out how to do their next steps in these adult environments. And we need to more purposefully work with them, I call it intentionally, as teacher, raising their consciousness about why you're working in groups. How can we get you more authentic experiences and exposure so that you see the connections between what we're asking you to do in class during the day and what you would be doing later in your career, in your life. So these are the skills, because we know that I would refer you to, I put on here on my notes, Knowledge Works did the future forecast work readiness. They did a big report that opened each of our work groups on our strategic plan, and like Paulo said, he wanted us to get out of the box of thinking. If any of you want to take a deeper dive in that, you're going to be blown away, because at the center of what kids need to know has nothing to do with academics. Nobody cares what you got on your ACT test. Nobody in the workforce cares what you got on an end of course test that the state is required by law right now to give you. At the center of it is the ability to accept ambiguity, to be flexible, to know your strengths, know what you still need to develop strengths in, know what you want, know where to get it, and how to achieve it so that you can get what you want in your life. And I would suspect that if we had time to talk even around in this room, our life paths have gone like this, right? And in this report, you're going to be changing not jobs, careers, at least 11 times, according to this forecast where they're going 40 years out. Kids that are born 20 years out. Kids that are born right now, where are they going to be that first year or two after high school? And they're trying to anticipate some scenarios of what the world of work will look like and the kinds of skills you're going to need to be successful. And it's quite different from Pat Bruns' experience where, oh, she liked art in high school and she was raised by Germans, and so you need a practical career, so go do art education because you can make money and you can do art. I mean, really, that was how I thought about it. And so then I spent 30 years plus doing just that. Nobody's going to do that anymore. Nobody's going to want to do it, and that raises another question. How are we going to attract and keep teachers? Because they're young professionals too. So we're going to have to change the way we do teaching and learning, that environment. You're not going to be able to put a teacher in a room and shut the door anymore, like I know there's some retired teachers in this room. We're going to have to find a way for teachers to collaborate during the school day. How can they talk to each other about what they're doing, best practices in their classrooms? It's going to take a different kind of leadership style at the district level. It's going to take a different philosophy of what do we expect, what do we want students to know and be able to do. And we're going to have to find a way to honor the notion that we need to spend time working on, strategically working on social, emotional, and 21st century skills. We can't just put kids in seats and think we're dumping information into their brains and they're going to spit them out on some computer. That's not how learning occurs. That's not how kids have ownership of what they want to know and able to do. And there's some really exciting work being done all around the state. I'm honored to see that every month people come, different school districts come and share what they're doing. And but you know, it's a cliche because we said it so much, but it really does take a whole village. And I think Cincinnati Public, quite honestly, has the model. I mean, they have the choice. You can, for whatever you want, they have community learning centers, which are their partnerships that are working more closely every day to help the school achieve their academic goals. And I think that's, it's kind of interesting, but I'll just put a plug for CPS because they're more well known, really nationally in a way, than maybe even in the city. People come from all over the world to see Euler School, which is in my backyard.
I have a question.
What do you see as the most?
I have the mic. Well,
There we go.
Whoever has the
There we
mic
go.
has
Susan,
control.
Yeah.
Can you explain the relationship between the federal Department of Education, the state, and then down to the local level, please?
So, the U.S. Department of Education, for instance, reauthorizes the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which was for a decade, No Child Left Behind, and now it's the Every Student Succeeds Act. So they give us the guidelines for who and what they will fund with title dollars. So the example and then they have the guidelines, they have to fall within, those are mainly for our priority schools, okay? So for instance, this time, they have things in there like expanding community learning centers. They have an expectation that you will increase parental engagement in the process of developing a local plan. So those kind of concepts were kind of driven a little bit by the ESSA plan. At the state level, so we have those guidelines that kind of flavor everything and direct the conversation. Then at the legislative level, and here's what's happened, like as I saw it when I first got on the board. The legislature comes up with, all well-intended, I'm not saying anything about any of that, come up with ideas, they pass laws. Somebody passed this law that says we have to have 7 end-of-course tests. This is my most recent example. So that got passed and then it gets implemented. So then the Department of Education and therefore the school board members, we are the ones that would create the rules and regulations for for those laws. I will give you probably an example that you would know better would be the 3rd grade reading guarantee. According to law, we have to raise the promotion score every year. And so the promotion score and the proficiency score of 3rd grade readers are 2 different things. What's happened is we're phasing that in. So the promotion score is lower than what is considered proficient. Okay, so we're not there yet. Not all schools are there yet. So we have a big discussion every year in my committee, my accountability committee, and we have to determine how many points to raise that. And we get, the data and everything from the department, and then we have to make a decision and vote on that. So that's an example. At the local level, your local boards of education determine how they implement the rules and regulations. You decide on your curriculum, you decide on, how many people, there might be a requirement of 20, I'll make this up, a 25-to-1 teacher ratio in grades 1 through 5. So if you go over that, then you might get dinged, or there's some other things you can apply for waivers, but there's guideline rules for all that kind of logistical, technical stuff. So it's complicated.
Okay.
But is that helpful? I don't know if that starts the...
Folks, we have to be a united front in here and respect each other, so we are when we leave. My question is, what is the most dangerous thing you see coming down from the Secretary of Education?
She has to pick one.
Pick one.
Well, because the U.S. Department of Education determines the amount of money and what is required for these federal dollars, I think we've clearly seen that they have a bent towards choice, meaning vouchers, and charter schools. I mean, so those kinds of things, and to me, that's the big deal, because I'm going to speak just to for-profit charters. For-profit charters that's flow-through money. We were, of the 20 years that for instance, ECOT was in business, because I think the industry is about 20 years old anyway, Only the last 2 years did the legislature put in place the ability for the Department of Education, and therefore us to vote on it, a review of the attendance of these charter schools. And that is why in the last 2 years, we voted that ECOT owed us $80 million. And then the next year, when we were able to review them again last year, they still hadn't figured that out, and they owed us another 15 billion, 60 million and 20 million the second time. So, you know, that's why leadership matters. We have to have folks in place that are protecting the scarce resources of our public schools so that all children can have an equal opportunity to succeed. And it's just not the way it is right now. We want to continue to strengthen those laws, okay? But quite frankly, you have a lot of people in the legislature that believe in this choice thing, although it seems to be targeted towards the big 8. The people that are passing these laws don't live inside these city limits, but they think that choice is going to be good for everybody else's kids, because it doesn't affect them that much. And they have bigger budgets often because of resources. Huh?
Who are the big 8?
The big 8 are like Cleveland, Toledo, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, Akron, Youngstown, I think. There's 8 of them. Yeah. And so you see, it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear. It's the urban centers. It's pretty clear the direction of kind of what's been going on.
May I? Do you know that a teacher here in town, oh, I'm sorry, a teacher here in town has written a book called Angels and Superheroes?
I think I haven't heard of it.
Okay, I'd like to show you this after we finish, and I hope you'll give it or make it known to people on the Board of Education, because it's a tremendous, I think, a tremendous book. Krista Taylor, the author, teaches in a school called Gamble Montessori in a poor neighborhood of Cincinnati. I forget what the racial breakdown is, probably mostly African American. This is partly an attack on the testing programs they have to go through and the way schools are graded, you know. But it's a profoundly good book. It includes all kind of little profiles of their students.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Then it's next. In a minute, we're going to have a question from a student.
I'm just wondering why LeBron James makes more money than teachers. Why we have to depend on him to start schools. It's like our culture is upside down and backwards. And it's, all these athletes, entertainers make the kind of money they do, and teachers make the money they do. It puts out a message that how important is education. And if we entertainers turn us into better consumers, teachers turn us into better citizens, and that's why we've got Trump as president.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me give you one more statistic. Only 43% of all Ohioans hold a 2- or 4-year college advanced degree or a credential, an industry credential. If you're in poverty, what do you think the percentage is? Less than 12%. This is, you know, I like to say, even if you don't like other people's children, I don't have any children myself, but if you don't like other people's children, it's in your best economic interest to help all children, because they are part of our future and our shared future. So it makes no sense to me that public schools are not supported when everybody talks about their property value. It goes up if you're in a good school district. And yet they don't want to pay the taxes on that to help support it. Maybe the system of funding schools is wrong. Okay, let's go with that. But we need folks that would support those kinds of things. We had a funding formula that was going to go in place, and then, well, that got canned when Kasich entered office. But we had a bipartisan, I was working with the Ohio Education Association still at the time, and we had a plan in place that had been put together that would make it more equitable to fund schools without such a reliance on local tax dollars. So we can do that again. But I'm sure that thing's still around somewhere on somebody's desk or in a bookshelf, and we could start that conversation again if we had people that wanted to do it. Thank you.
I'd like to see civics classes come back, from my way of thinking.
Yes.
Here's a student's question.
So at my school, a lot of people come from poor neighborhoods, and so it's not the best school in the district, but it's still a good school because we're one of the only two that has the advanced program, the technical advanced college prep program. But say there's a student who is incredibly smart and they're doing their absolute best to get as good as grades as they can so that they can go to a good college, but because they come from a poor background, they can't do that because they wouldn't have enough money. Do you believe that if it's possible, do you think that schools should be giving scholarships to people like that who have worked their butts off to get into good colleges, but they can't get in because they don't have the money?
Trinity, that's a really fair question, and I'm not sure how we got to this place where colleges cost, $50,000 a year or something. But and I know you see, and that isn't that, but point. What if we made an investment? I mean, I went through the National Defense Loan, so when I went to school, college. But that was a different time. I was able to work a little bit, save a little bit of money, and then I was a day tripper at school. I didn't stay on campus, but I started at UC. And then when I got out, I had a year before I had to start paying back, and I only had to pay back 10% at a time. And if I taught for 10 years in an urban school, every year that 10% was gone. So what if we could create some programs where, you were invested, it's not free money, right? But you know that if you are in a path that you feel that's good for you, why couldn't we help you by deferring some of that, and through the work that you do once you're in your job, it could help defer. Some of that could be deferred. I think you know more about this, Katie. I think Richard Cordray, he's looking at, I think, a 2-year associate's degree, paying for a 2-year associate's degree. To me, that would go a long way in helping folks continue into their future career path, get established, so that they could continue to go on. So there's a lot of creative stuff we could do, but you have to have people at the table that are willing to do that. There's money. I mean, there's
in the legislature.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The legislature. Yeah.
Last question.
I'll combine two things. I think it's important to recognize that the Republicans really hate education, and why. When I first had a faculty meeting at Miami University in 1975, the president said, "You know why the state legislature has cut back on support for higher education? It's because you idiots protested the Vietnam War." And I think you can't exaggerate the degree to which Republicans have internalized the terrible things that happened in the 1960s when people actually did critical thinking. This ties in. this ties in with my problem here is I'm an old-fashioned educator. I believe that the key thing should be education for citizenship. I don't see anything here about foreign languages.
It's on there.
I hope so.
It is.
Because I think that's a crucial thing, and somebody mentioned sort of civics classes and so forth. Bennett mentioned citizenship. I think that has to be central, and that's one of the things they're most afraid of, is precisely people developing critical thinking.
Thank you.
And with that, if you have comments, please make sure you catch her before. I'll hold her here. So you have a comment. Yeah, she's here.
I just want to make a comment because I think people need to know Pat Bruns is very accessible.
Accessible.
Accessible. I read something in the paper that I didn't like. I called her. She answered her phone. We talked 3 or 4 different times. She is one of those rare people you can actually communicate with.
Wow.
I think that's my job.
Thank you for that. And with that, we're going to bring this to a close. You guys have done it again. You have behaved well, almost, and you guys have been really good, responsive, and you have been a wonderful audience. Thank you so much for coming today.
It's becoming a habit when these old fashioned.
It's becoming a bad habit. Sorry about that.
You know, when they decided
A good habit.
second period.
We do have food, so there's not much of it left, but if there's food, you may take some of the food home. Thank you for coming. Oh, we have 2 announcements. Oh, in the back. Where's the other? 2 announcements for people who came in late.
You have an announcement? You have the announcement?
Yeah.
Where's the announcement?
Wherever they are.
Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. I'm Cedric Jensen. I've been here plenty of times before. If you don't know me, I am candidate, just won the primary for state rep in the 33rd district.
My district, yes.
So it is one of those things we call safe districts, which is a good thing because the top of our ticket needs a lot of help. And I've dedicated myself to making sure I'm getting out top of the ticket and making sure we get out the vote, especially in my district. So today I had a friend down, Dontavius, who is the political director for Steve Dettelbach, running for Attorney General. I took him to Sugar and Spice, and I had an alert that goes off on my phone every Tuesday that this was happening. I said, we have got to go down the street so I can introduce you to some great folks. So I wanted him to stop by and say hello and tell you a little bit more about his candidate.
Here we go.
Good afternoon, Democrats. Good afternoon, Democrats. How you doing? So as Cedric said, my name is Dontavius Gerald. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for your advocacy. Thank you so much for your volunteerism. And thank you so much for your dedication to be voices for your communities. As Cedric said, my name is Dontavius Gerald. I'm the political director for the Steve Dettelbach campaign for AG. He's going to be Ohio's next AG, y'all. Let's clap it up for that. He's going to be the next Ohio AG. And if you don't know Steve, Steve's been traveling around the state. We just received actually the FOP endorsement, which is really excited about that. And Steve is a fighter because he believes that no one is above the law. That no one,
Not even the president?
no one
Not
is above the law. And as we travel around the state, and our hope is at some point we can try to get Steve down here. We're working out various challenges in the schedule. As you know, we've got to hit every county as hard as we hit Hamilton, Franklin, and Cuyahoga. But what I will say is that, you know, don't be afraid to call me as a political director if you need anything from us, any literature, any information, any perspective, because, you know, we have a very mighty, small to mighty staff, and as we're traveling around the state hearing perspectives and reflections from each of you, we're taking that back to our team and back to Steve so that we can continually refine how we are engaging communities all across this great state. And so I just wanted to take a few minutes. I know you all had a pretty robust agenda already this afternoon, but I just want to say thank you again for your work. And I hope that I can count on each and every one of you to help take Steve over the finish line on November 6th. So thank you all so much.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Okay, so he's gonna, newsletter's gonna get it. Go for it, folks. Finish up the food. Have a wonderful day. You're our great, great audience. Thank you for coming.